All right, Janice, thank you very much. This morning on Today's Health, living with celiac disease. The disorder, which is an intolerance to the protein gluten, was previously thought to be extremely rare. But a recent study indicates there may be as many as 2 million cases in this country, many of which go undiagnosed.
She started to lose a lot of luster and energy. She was refusing a lot of food. Her bones were literally nearly coming through her skin.
We spent a couple visits going to different physicians trying to sort through that.
When they saw such a big belly and such thin bones, initially they would prod and test and talk about the terrible C word, cancer.
At 16 months, Olivia Hofheinz was listless and had stopped growing. Her parents, Lisa Evangelista and Fritz Hofheinz, were understandably alarmed.
I don't think any of the physicians that she saw, at least 6 or 7 visits in about, I'd say, 3-month span, mentioned nutrition or diet or anything related to celiac sprue.
Celiac disease, also known as celiac sprue, is an autoimmune disease that occurs when gluten, a protein found in wheat, rye, barley, and sometimes oats, wreaks havoc on the body. It wears away at the villi in the small intestines, making it difficult for those with the disease to absorb nutrients from food.
And this can be, again, diarrhea, but it can be the other way around, the constipation. Abdominal pain is a common denominator.
Dr. Alessio Fasano at the Center for Celiac Research at the University of Maryland knew the disease, which is more prominent in Europe, was not on the radar screens of many doctors in this country.
This is close to occludin.
Right.
But earlier this year, Dr. Fasano completed a study which found for those people who do not have a relative diagnosed with celiac, the chances of having it are 1 in 133.
We projected the number of at least 1.5, 2 million individuals in the United States having the condition. Only a fraction of them have been diagnosed so far.
You look wonderful.
Olivia was diagnosed 10 months after the onset of her symptoms, and today at age 4 is doing well.
39 pounds.
That means maintaining a completely gluten-free diet, currently the only way to treat the condition.
Would you like to try a bag of those?
It's a task made more difficult by the fact that the FDA does not explicitly require all gluten to be identified on food labels.
Well, we find ourselves continually reading labels. The trickier things are the stabilizers, the natural food colorings or the natural flavorings, which you don't know the source of.
Is that what it says?
37-year-old Allison Herwood had symptoms of celiac for 11 years before finding a doctor who could help her.
And it was an onset of sudden diarrhea. Food just kept running through me, and I lost about 16 pounds. I was finally diagnosed and felt a sense of relief until, of course, I tried to figure out the diet and try to live on the diet.
While Allison's husband, Jim, is supportive, eating outside their home can be a little tricky.
We went over a friend's house for dinner, and they were serving a lovely meal, but they were breaking the French bread right by where the main meal was, and I didn't know them well enough to say, hey, can we separate that a little bit? And here I am inside, like, panicking that, you know, crumbs are going to fall into my dish.
So Allison, a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., is trying to make changes in the way foods are labeled.
Weren't we going to do a doctor sign-on letter?
Yeah.
As part of the American Celiac Task Force, she's working with Andrea Lavario, whose son Pablo has the disease. Like Olivia, Pablo had a bloated belly and protruding bones, but his doctors did not think celiac was the likely cause.
She said flat out, he does not have celiac disease. And I was sort of dumbfounded, and at the end of the appointment, I said, humor me, run the test. And she said, all right, I'll run it. 2 weeks later, we got a phone call from the doctor very sheepishly and said, it appears your son has celiac disease.
Now, Allison and Andrea are trying to get Congress to take action on a bill that would require food manufacturers to include certain ingredients on their labels, no matter what the source.
The bill that we hope will be introduced this year would cover the top 8 food allergens, which are peanuts, tree nuts, fish, shellfish, milk, eggs, wheat, and soybeans. So if we can get wheat on a label, celiacs will have a very big piece of information that they're currently lacking.
They also hope to increase understanding of a disease that, for now, few people know about.
You know, unlike a peanut allergy, where if you ingest a peanut or a derivative of a peanut, you can go into anaphylactic shock and your life is threatened immediately. With celiac disease, it's much more of a long-term process that's still life-threatening, that is still going to give you susceptibility to cancers, or for women, you know, miscarriage or infertility. It could lead to chronic anemia, osteoporosis, diseases that affect you for the rest of your life.
Dr. Fasano and others continue to work on alternative treatments for celiac disease, but right now the only way to manage it is by avoiding foods with gluten. Shelley Case is a dietitian and author of the book Gluten-Free Diet. Shelley, good morning. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you, Matt.
I was so alarmed by hear that one woman who say even if a couple of crumbs fall into what she's eating, if those crumbs contain gluten, she can be in big trouble.
Yes, for many people it just takes a small amount and they can react immediately, or some people it may take several hours.
How long does it take to get out of your system?
Well, it really varies on how soon you can get it eliminated.
And flush it out.
Yes, but the more exposure to gluten, the more chances of having other problems. So that's why this diet is so critical, to follow it very strictly.
Well, let's say I'm having someone over to dinner who has celiac disease. What are the things I'm safe serving? What are the good things?
Well, the foods that are naturally gluten-free are fruits and vegetables, meat, plain meat, fish, poultry, eggs, nuts, seeds, legumes, milk, cheese, yogurt, rice, potatoes. So you can make a meal out of those foods, but the key is it's got to be plain to start with.
All right, we have to avoid wheat, rye, barley, sometimes oats. Let's take a look at some foods that do contain glutens.
Right, and there's many foods. There's the breads, bagels, buns, rolls, donuts, muffins, cookies, cakes, crackers, pasta, some cereals, and even beer.
All right, and then there's the area of the foods where you probably don't think they contain glutens, but you've really got to start to read labels carefully. And let's spend some time talking about these.
Well, some of the foods that people may not be aware of are soy sauces, for example, are a combination of wheat and soy. Most canned soups and dried soup mixes are made with a wheat flour to thicken it, or a substance called hydrolyzed wheat protein. And then even candy, who would think that something like red licorice would have flour in it, but it's made up of flour. So that's why a person has to read the label every time they go shopping to make sure that the product is gluten-free.
And again, know the catchwords to look for.
Exactly. Now, so in those foods it would be labeled, but there's many other foods where it's not labeled, and that is why the American Celiac Task Force is really trying to work hard to lobby Congress to get those to be changed. Because I'll give you an example. For potato chips, flavored potato chips, it'll say on the label maybe just seasonings, but seasonings are a mixture of spices and wheat flour. Another example would be cereals. It may just say flavoring, but that flavoring could actually be barley malt.
And we don't have a lot of time, but I want the camera to pan over and get a look at some of the products that contain substitutes for gluten that people with celiac disease can eat, and I would imagine this is an expanding market.
Oh, absolutely. When I was researching information for my book, I found over 1,600 gluten-free specialty products from more than 130 companies here in the States, Canada, and in Europe. So there's sort of three categories. There's a variety of different flours like amaranth, buckwheat, quinoa, flax, sorghum, potato, and rice, where you can make gluten-free products, and there's a lot of good cookbooks on the market to help you do that. The other categories, you can buy mixes, and so if you don't want to do from scratch. And the last category is ready-to-eat foods.
All right, Shelley Case, and with 2 million people in this country with celiac disease, hopefully the number of products continues to grow.
It will.
It's great to have you
Thank
here.
you very much.
And you can find more information about celiac disease on our website. Just go to today.msnbc.com. And still to come, Southwestern pork chops and chicken fried strawberries, courtesy of Texas's Lonesome Dove Western Bistro. And up next, the man behind reality TV's The Restaurant will catch up with Rocco DeSpirito after these messages.
What table did I just take an order for?
You think I can do this without...